You know, the path of least resistance is to go for the low-hanging fruit, the easy top 10s as we round out 2023. And most are watching this video thinking that I'm going to drop the 10 best Hot Toys releases of 2023. Psh, please, all those lists are the same. The Batman, Carnage, Cad Bane, there's your top 3. Just saved you a click from another channel. But hopefully you tune in here for something a little bit different. That's my goal. So without further ado, here are my top 10 most shockingly good in-hand figures. Right, it's kind of a mouthful. How about this? The most surprising releases... no, that's lame too. The most underappreciated figures of 2023. That's the one. Roll the intro. Well, what's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel for a video that is actually me talking about figures for once, instead of vlogging all my failures when it comes to redoing my collection room. And of course, if you can't tell, or if this is your first time, the old collection room is undergoing a little bit of a makeover. We aren't there yet, but we're close. But I'm hoping to get everything done by the end of the year so that we can start the year with a brand new collection tour video. But the thing about that is the last one of those I did ended up pulling 70,000 views so far, so I'm wanting to make sure I do my diligence and do it right on this next one. So if you like that type of content, or if you just like what I have to say in general, go ahead and give me a like on this video, and please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. That way your notifications are on and you know when all the good stuff drops. Now, as I said in the opening, everyone out there is putting out their top 10 figures of 2023, but spoiler alert, I'm willing to bet you that more than 95% of all of them are going to be the exact same thing. So I want to give you something different. Why? Because I value the fact that you take the time out of your day or night to click on my videos. So I want to make sure I'm doing due diligence to offer you exceptional content. So let's talk about my personal 10, my most underappreciated figures that Hot Toys has released this year. Oh, and of course, I'm giving you real explanations from in-hand products. I'm not just BSing you and spitting out takes about figures I don't even own. So let's get into it. What makes a figure underappreciated? Well, to me, it's a figure that A, flew under the radar, B, didn't receive the praise right out of the gate, and or C, and this is one of the ones that's the most important, opinions were changed when the actual figure was in hand. And as I've said before, having something in your actual hand is totally different than looking at photos online. Trust me. So that is what I'm going to be doing. Let's take a look at number 10, in hand of course. And boy, you need almost 2 hands to handle this gargantuan fish man. That is King Shark from the Suicide Squad. Now, I think this may have been the first figure actually released in the calendar year, released all the way back on January 4th. And of course, I didn't pre-order this bloody thing. It's ridiculous. So I was told, and so everyone thought. No, I would not secure the bag until midway through the year when I stopped into the Totally Rad Toy House here in Nashville. And there he was. Yes, I know, it's a power pose figure, which means outside of the arms, it is not articulated. But do you really need it to be? I mean, the dude's enormous. He looks incredible. And look at some of the details in the teeth, the paint apps on the skin, and even the tailoring on the board shorts. No, I did not pay full price. They were running a sale, so maybe that made me like him a little bit better out of the gate, but there is no denying the shelf presence of this thing. No, I don't have Peacemaker, and no, I don't think we'll be getting any of the other members of the squad, unfortunately, and that's a dang shame. Looking at you, Harley Quinn. But when it comes to underappreciated figures, I don't think there's a better way to kick off this list than with this actual misfit, that being King Shark. Now, don't look now, but I have a young Avenger coming in at number 9. Yup, that's right, it's Kate Bishop from Hawkeye, which released on September 4th. Now, this is a peculiar one, I agree. There is no Hawkeye figure from the show to accompany her. There's no dog, and there is a little bit of controversy about the head sculpt. Does that really look like Haley Steinfeld? Why is that bandage on her chin anyway? Weird choice, and of course, psh, I'm not about to fill my shelf with anything from the MCU. Look, I get it. This isn't Iron Man and it's never going to be, but what you do have is a really well done figure underneath all of that hate. The purple really does pop on a shelf. Her outfit is extremely well tailored, which lends itself to some pretty darn good articulation. Plus, if you have Yelena or any of the other previous Hawkeye figures, I think you have the makings of a pretty sweet shelf. But who knows where the MCU actually goes from here? Will Kate Bishop headline a film and people rush out in FOMO to find this figure later? Who knows? Probably not. Though, I can appreciate it for what it is. A great representation of a new character from an above-average TV show. And for the record, yes, I think the head sculpt is pretty good. Next, coming in at number 8 is a figure that may actually be on some of those top 10 figures lists, but it is my list today, and because no one expected it to be this good. That's right, Moon Knight, released back on June 20th, is an extremely underrated figure. The show started out with so much hype, but as the series wound down after 6 episodes that culminated with more questions and a giant kaiju fight, yes, that thing actually happened, spoilers, sorry, people's hype for Moon Knight eventually took a dive. But our collecting summer was saved when the figure dropped and people started getting it in hand. Talk about word of mouth. The truth that this figure was so incredible started to trickle out, and across the internet, people rushed to add their name to the waitlist for this once seemingly mid figure. The articulation is wild. The detailing on the body, the symbols on the chest and the weapons, that big old moon base, and the cape. My God, the cape! For me, I think the cape is what took this figure to another level. Forever, we as collectors have complained about how terrible capes are on our figures, but not Moon Knight. The wired cape was a thing of perfection and made him look incredible in almost any pose. If I were going to say anything negative about this figure, it would be this. The thing that most people agree with is that the hands are impossible to get on. And because the gauntlets are so deep, you really have to break your back to get the hands to stay in. Now, you could always use the hairdryer, warm up the plastic approach, but I ain't got time for that. A strong east wind could probably knock my hands off of my Moon Knight, but that's being nitpicky. This figure is superb, and whenever he makes a return to the screen or TV, I want to believe that more and more people will be hitting the old ISO on the BSTs for Moon Knight. Now, you know I love Wanda, and you may be wondering if she was on the list. No, that's low-hanging fruit, like I said. You may say, well, what about the new Doctor Strange? Well, no, he's widely known to be an excellent figure as well, but what people are not talking about is Infinity Ultron, the true version of what Ultron would have become had the Avengers not stopped him. Released all the way back on March 30th, this die-cast figure from the What If TV series turned out better than I ever could have imagined, standing at almost 16 inches and weighing an absolute ton. You can feel the quality of this figure immediately in your hand, and we're always asking for Hot Toys to do something different, and they certainly did here. They gave us a figure that was a concept, essentially, relegated to just one episode in a cartoon for all that matters. But boy, this is one of my favorite figures in my entire collection. The sword, staff, what do you want to call it, that he comes with is massive as well, and I love what they did with the wired cape. Not to mention, there are 2 looks that you can choose from. You can show the really cool Vision sculpt underneath that helmet, or put the helmet on for a close-to-comet accurate Ultron head. Of course, this figure's not without issues, and the biggest one that I think is not having a USB-powered figure. Hot Toys recently started rolling out that feature at the time, and this one didn't get it. The chest piece looks good with or without the lights on, but what is really lacking is when you don't have the eyes lit up when you're displaying the Vision sculpt. That was one of the biggest reasons that I opted for putting the helmet down in my display. Perhaps if this figure was a little bit more well-known and less obscure, had USB powered, it could be sitting at a top of people's best figures of 23 list. So, unfortunately, it'll remain on my list as one of the most underappreciated. Now, there are certain moments in TV and film that you remember where you were when it happened. The movie theater that you were sitting in when you watched it. The snack you were eating when you were streaming an event. And if you're a fan of Star Wars, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly how you felt at the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, when Luke freaking Skywalker emerged with the green lightsaber to save Grogu and his friends. People immediately started saying that Star Wars is back! And unfortunately, I'm not for sure that we've had a peak moment since then, but that did not stop collectors from asking for a brand new Luke Skywalker figure to hit the shelves. Hype for a Mando version of Luke was at a fever pitch, and the time this figure did release on March 14th, people ended up with everything they could have wanted. So you may be asking, why is this figure on the list? why it's so underappreciated, and sadly, I think it's because of the current state of Star Wars, that everyone just kind of forgot and moved on to the next shiny thing. So, as far as the figure itself goes, it's phenomenal, everyone knows that, and some people are even considering it to be Figure of the Year, an early contender early on, but because of the state of this thing and the state of Star Wars, this figure is still very underappreciated. So do yourself a favor. Remember what it was like to watch that Dark Trooper be turned to ash at the hand of Jedi Master Luke Skywalker. Remember the sound of that green blade melting through those droids, and pick up your Mando Luke, if you have one, and give it a little repose out of respect, and try to recapture that magic. I promise you, you won't regret it. But speaking of suffering the fate of apathy, our next most underappreciated figure is Fennec Shand from the Book of Boba Fett. Let's put away the talk about how good or how bad the show was and not dwell on that. Let's talk specifically about this figure, because undeniably it is one of the best female head sculpts that we have ever received. When she released all the way back on July 4th, Hot Toys collectors were treated with something truly special in the likeness to actress Ming-Na Wen. Everyone was impressed with the prototype, and then the production piece hit, and it did not disappoint either. And what's even better is that once the figure was released, we learned that it was blessed with double-jointed elbows, which took the figure up another notch, something that other Mandalorian female figures have still not figured out how to do, wildly enough. So, if you're looking for a kick-ass female character or just wanting an awesome-looking Star Wars figure, look no further than Fennec Shand. Of course, if you have a Boba Fett figure, and especially if you have the throne, not having this figure is truly a crime and an absolute top 5 most underappreciated figure in 2023. But next up is a figure that I've received so many laughs about and so much hate, but truly, the joke is on you if you do not cop this figure. That's right, the Blue Bailman from the WB100 line. Now, for some reason, I've just been enamored with this figure ever since it was announced. And I know there's no secret to the fact that I love the Dark Knight trilogy. I've said before, Christian Bale is my definitive Batman, so that may something to do with it for why I love it so much. But I just love the idea of an exclusive figure celebrating a milestone for a company to be something like this. I love the homage to the old Batman comics with the blue cowl. And believe me, I've heard all the criticism already that it doesn't work on this type of suit. It'd be better if the bat symbol was gold. Why isn't the cape the same color as the cowl? And so on and so forth. Look, I don't have all the answers to the design choices for this figure, but what I can say, definitively, is that it is 100% better in hand. So, when this guy released back on October 10th, I eagerly waited mine, and when it finally showed, it did not disappoint. Is this figure for everybody? Of course not, but it works for me. And I think that if you could just look past the color palette, you will see that there is something truly special about this Blue Bailman, and I am happy that he's home with me. Now, I'm going to be honest. This is another figure that I did not originally have pre-ordered. In fact, I wasn't even planning on getting it in the first place, but once the blogger photos came out and I started seeing some in-hand reviews myself, I knew I better get on the wait list for the first ever C-3PO from Hot Toys. When this figure released back on September 10th, I could not have been less hyped for it. After all, I wanted the gold version of C-3PO that we all know and love from the original trilogy. This was cool, but did I really want a busted and dirty C-3PO from the prequels when I already had the gold sideshow version? These are questions that I was conflicting myself with. So I added myself to the waitlist and was going to let fate decide whether I ended up with this figure or not. And boy, I'm glad that fate intervened. My waitlist converted and C-3PO was headed over to me to check out. And when I say there is a night and day difference between the sideshow and the Hot Toys version, I could not be more emphatic about that. I actually did a comparison video on my Instagram, and just the sheer mass of the die-cast alone makes this figure of exceptional quality. He's on this list not because he's the most incredible figure ever, but because he is truly one of the most underappreciated, at least by me. If the die-cast all-gold version from the 40th anniversary line is even half this good, I think we very well may have the most definitive C-3PO that will ever be produced. So, fingers crossed. Now, there's no coincidence that the figure taking the silver medal is actually decked out in all silver. And of course, I'm talking about the exclusive D100 Iron Man. When I say that these figures were originally released, the WB100, the Disney 100 line, A lot of people rolled their eyes and thought these are simple cash grabs, and they very well may be. But when the lotto system came up on Sideshow and I was selected as an opportunity to purchase this figure, I was ecstatic. And then, when it finally released on August 5th, we got to see just how special this was in all of its glory. Yes, I know, it's another Iron Man, and people are sick of seeing these things, but you could not have picked a better anniversary exclusive for Marvel than this. It's an iconic suit, the Mark VII, from one of the most iconic films of all time, The Avengers. And it is painted in a very regal scarlet and silver paint scheme, mixing the fact that there was a limited run of these, and you really have a special figure, I think. Like I said with the WB100 Batman, if you're going to do an exclusive, this is how you do it. And I think that this one is worthy of all the praise that it gets. There's a reason that I have it as a centerpiece within my Iron Man collection, and one of the first things that you see when you come into my new collection room. I want the eyes to be drawn to this figure because it is that good, and it is a great talking piece for even the casual fan when they take a look at your collection. And finally, number one, the most underappreciated figure Hot Toys has put out this calendar year is the Batman XE suit, released right at the beginning of the year on January 19th. Now this figure is that I literally did a 180 on. As you remember, last year I did a purge of some of my DC figures because I decided I was only going to collect film versions of Batman. I sold Arkham Knight, I sold Batman Beyond, and so forth. But then, this figure released, and I truthfully side-eyed it. I thought it was way too big, it was way too niche of a suit to add to my collection, and not to mention, there isn't even a Mr. Freeze to pair him with. So, I passed. But I stepped into my local comic shop, and what was sitting on the shelf? The Batman XE suit. So I picked it up, and I was totally blown away. The articulation alone is one of the best of any figure in my collection, not just Batman. And the dynamic base, the hulking shelf presence, and the potential for more Arkham series figures brought me right back in because of this figure. I ended up going back and rebuying the Batman Beyond figure. And yes, I'm still on the lookout to add Arkham Knight and a few others back from that line to the collection, so stay tuned for that. Well, that's going to do it for us here today, but now it's your turn to sound off in the comments below. What did you think of this list? What did you have in mind? Is there one I missed? And what is your most underappreciated figure of 2023? And of course, let me know the most overhyped figure of the year. I would love to hear that from you down below. As I said, if you like this type of content and you have not yet subscribed, I could really use your help in getting me over the 7,000 sub mark by the end of the year. I would certainly appreciate it. Happy holidays, happy collecting, and as always, I'll be seeing you in our next video, which may be, could be, potentially, the next collection tour video, so stay tuned.